For decades, Hollywood has been fascinated by Diane Lane, not only because of her talent and beauty, but also because of the mystery surrounding her personal life. From the moment she became famous, rumors followed her everywhere. People whispered about secret romances, intense love affairs, and hidden heartbreaks. Diane Lane was often described as elegant, calm, and graceful, yet tabloids painted a very different picture behind closed doors. Unlike many celebrities who openly share their private lives, Diane chose silence. She rarely addressed gossip and avoided feeding the media frenzy. This only made people more curious. Fans and journalists alike wondered if there was more to her story than what appeared on screen. As years passed, the rumors grew louder, especially as she took on emotionally powerful roles that involved passion, betrayal, and forbidden love. Many began to question whether her performances reflected real experiences. Now, at the age of 60, Diane Lane stands as a symbol of quiet strength. While she has not publicly revealed shocking confessions, her life story speaks volumes. Through her interviews, career choices, and actions, she has slowly shown how Hollywood obsession with scandal often exaggerates the truth. Diane's journey is not just about romance or rumors. It is about survival, independence, and learning how to love without losing oneself. To understand why her love life became such a hot topic, we must first look at where her story began, long before fame entered her world. Diane Lane's early life was far from the glamorous image people associate with Hollywood stars. She was born on January 22, 1965, in New York City, into a family deeply connected to the arts. Her mother, Colleen Farrington, was a nightclub singer and former Playboy centerfold, while her father, Burton Lane, worked as a drama coach and cab driver. On the surface, her upbringing seemed exciting and creative. However, behind closed doors, her parents' relationship was unstable and filled with conflict. They divorced when Diane was still very young, and this separation changed her life forever. Custody battles followed, and her father eventually gained custody, which was uncommon at the time. Diane grew up in a small apartment above a theater, surrounded by actors, scripts, and constant uncertainty. There was no traditional family routine, no sense of long-term security. Her mother moved away and came in and out of her life, leaving Diane emotionally torn. The most shocking moment came when Diane was only 13 years old, when her mother took her to Georgia without her father's consent. Confused and frightened, Diane found herself in a new environment that did not feel like home. Rather than accepting the situation, she made a bold decision. At just 14, she ran away and returned to New York, choosing independence over fear. Living alone at such a young age forced Diane to grow up quickly. She learned self-reliance, emotional control, and survival skills that would later shape both her career and her relationships. This unstable childhood deeply influenced how she viewed love, trust, and commitment. Growing up without stability left a lasting mark on Diane Lane's emotional world. From a young age, she learned that love could be unreliable and that the people closest to you could leave without warning. Watching her parents' marriage fall apart and being pulled between two very different lifestyles made her cautious. Diane learned to protect herself emotionally. While other children depended on their parents, she had to depend on herself. This early independence made her strong, but it also created emotional walls. Diane wanted love, but she feared abandonment. She craved deep connection, yet struggled with trust. These emotional contradictions followed her into adulthood. In relationships, she often balanced a desire for closeness with a need for personal freedom. She never wanted to lose herself or feel trapped. This mindset later influenced the types of roles she chose in films, many of which explored complicated emotions, longing, and inner conflict. Her performances felt real because they came from lived experience. However, this emotional depth also made her vulnerable in her personal life. Diane hoped to find a love that was stable and lasting, something she had never truly experienced growing up. Unfortunately, Hollywood is not known for providing emotional security. Fame, pressure, and constant public attention made relationships even more difficult. As she entered the entertainment industry, Diane carried her childhood wounds with her. These wounds did not break her, but they shaped her choices, especially when it came to love. They also made her an easy target for speculation, as people often confuse emotional complexity with scandal. Diane Lane's rise to fame was fast and impressive. Acting was not just a career choice. It was part of her environment from the beginning. Surrounded by theater through her father's work, she began performing on stage at just 6 years old. Even as a child, she had a natural presence that caught attention. By her early teens, it was clear she was more than just talented. She was exceptional. Her big break came in 1979 with the film A Little Romance, where she starred alongside legendary actor Laurence Olivier. Critics were amazed by her maturity, grace, and emotional depth at such a young age. Hollywood quickly labeled her as the next big star. This attention continued with major roles in films like The Outsiders, Rumblefish, and Streets of Fire during the 1980s. Diane became a symbol of youthful beauty and talent. However, with fame came pressure. When a few of her films failed at the box office, Hollywood briefly turned its back on her. Instead of chasing attention, Diane stepped away, reassessed her path, and slowly rebuilt her career. Her comeback in the late 1990s and early 2000s proved her resilience. Films like A Walk on the Moon and Unfaithful showcase her emotional power and earned critical praise. As her performances grew bolder, the public became more curious about her real life. People began to ask whether her on-screen passion reflected real experiences. This curiosity fueled rumors and gossip, pushing Diane's private life into the spotlight. As Diane Lane's career flourished, her personal life became a topic of public interest. Being young, famous, and constantly surrounded by other successful actors made romance almost unavoidable. Some of her early relationships were genuine connections, while others were brief and intense. One of her earliest high-profile relationships was with actor Christopher Lambert. Their romance eventually led to marriage in 1988 and the birth of their daughter. For a time, Diane believed she found the stability she longed for. However, the pressures of Hollywood, long periods apart, and demanding careers strained their marriage. They divorced in the mid-1990s, leaving Diane heartbroken. This experience deeply affected her, reinforcing her fears about love's fragility. After the divorce, Diane became more private and cautious. She continued dating, but avoided turning her relationships into public spectacles. Rumors linked her to various actors, but many of these stories were exaggerated or unconfirmed. The media often blurred the line between truth and speculation, turning ordinary relationships into dramatic headlines. Diane's elegance and reserved nature made her an interesting contrast to the gossip surrounding her. She rarely responded to rumors, allowing stories to fade on their own. While some saw this as secrecy, it was actually a form of self-protection. Diane valued emotional safety over public approval. Diane Lane's second marriage to actor Josh Brolin brought renewed hope but also fresh challenges. They married in 2004, and for a while, it appeared to be a strong partnership. Both were respected actors, and their relationship seemed grounded. However, their marriage faced serious struggles. Public incidents, including Brolin's arrest following a domestic dispute, brought unwanted attention. Although Diane later described the situation as a misunderstanding and did not press charges, the media quickly turned it into a scandal. This event highlighted how quickly personal struggles can become public drama in Hollywood. Despite efforts to move forward, the marriage ended in divorce in 2013. This second major heartbreak could have hardened Diane, but instead, it strengthened her resolve to live life on her own terms. She chose dignity over drama and growth over bitterness. Through these experiences, Diane learned that fame often complicates love. Relationships become public property, and privacy becomes a luxury. Yet, she continued to believe in love, even as she no longer chased it. Much of the talk surrounding Diane Lane's so-called scandalous affairs comes from rumors rather than confirmed facts. On-screen chemistry with co-stars like Richard Gere in Unfaithful sparked speculation about real-life romances. However, Diane consistently clarified that these connections were purely professional. Similar rumors followed her collaborations with other actors, but none were substantiated. Hollywood has a long history of confusing powerful performances with personal truth. Diane's ability to portray intense emotion made people assume her personal life mirrored her roles. In reality, she maintained strong boundaries between work and private life. While she did experience relationships and heartbreak, the idea of constant secret affairs was largely created by tabloids. Diane's silence often allowed these stories to grow, but it also prevented them from defining her. Over time, audiences began to see the pattern. Sensational headlines rarely match reality. Diane was not hiding scandals. She was protecting her peace in an era where celebrities share every detail of their lives on social media. Diane Lane's commitment to privacy stands out. She has consistently redirected interviews toward her work rather than her relationships. This choice has allowed her to maintain a sense of normalcy and emotional balance. Diane understands that fame is temporary, but personal integrity lasts. By refusing to overshare, she has avoided many of the pitfalls that damage long-term careers. Her approach has also earned her respect within the industry. While gossip magazines continue to speculate, Diane remains focused on meaningful roles and personal fulfillment. She does not deny her past or pretend heartbreak did not shape her. Instead, she accepts it as part of her journey. This quiet honesty resonates with fans who value authenticity over drama. Today, Diane Lane views love with wisdom rather than fantasy. She no longer believes in fairy tale endings or perfect romances. Life has taught her that love can be beautiful, painful, and temporary all at once. She values emotional honesty and self-respect above all else. Rather than seeking validation through relationships, she finds fulfillment in her career, motherhood, and personal growth. Diane understands that loving deeply, even when it ends, is not a failure. It is part of being human. This mature perspective reflects her emotional evolution. She no longer feels pressure to explain herself or live up to public expectations. Instead, she chooses peace and authenticity. Diane Lane's life story is not one of scandal, but of resilience. From a troubled childhood to Hollywood stardom, she has navigated fame with grace and strength. Despite rumors, heartbreak, and intense scrutiny, she has remained true to herself. At 60, Diane Lane stands as an example of how to live with dignity in an industry obsessed with exposure. Her journey shows that silence can be powerful, privacy can be protective, and love does not need to be perfect to be meaningful. While Hollywood may continue to speculate, Diane Lane's true legacy lies in her work, her resilience, and her unwavering sense of self that as Diane Lane moved into her later years, Hollywood's attitude toward her subtly changed, as it often does with actresses who grow older in an industry obsessed with youth. Yet instead of fighting this shift or desperately trying to stay in the spotlight, Diane chose a different path, one rooted in confidence, self-acceptance, and quiet reinvention. She understood that her value was not tied to headlines, romantic rumors, or box office numbers, but to the depth she brought to every role and the life experience behind her performances. While many actresses feel pressure to hide their age, Diane embraced it. She spoke openly about growing older, describing it not as a loss, but as a gain in clarity and freedom. This mindset allowed her to choose roles that reflected real women, complex, thoughtful, and emotionally layered. Films like Under the Tuscan Sun and Cinema Verite showed a more mature Diane Lane, one who could carry a story with warmth, wisdom, and authenticity. These roles resonated deeply with audiences because they felt honest and relatable. At the same time, Hollywood never fully stopped its fascination with her personal life. Even as she aged, rumors about relationships and past affairs continued to resurface, often recycled without new information. Diane, however, no longer felt the need to defend herself or correct every false story. She had reached a stage in life where peace mattered more than public opinion. Instead of reacting, she responded by living well, focusing on her craft, her daughter, and her personal happiness. Aging gave her a new kind of power, the power to say no, to walk away, and protect her emotional space. Rather than being defined by who she dated or what the tabloids aid, Diane Lane redefined herself as an artist with lasting relevance. Her journey proved that longevity in Hollywood does not come from constant reinvention driven by fear, but from authenticity and self-respect. In a world that often pressures women to fade quietly, Diane Lane chose to age loudly in purpose, even if quietly in public, showing that strength, grace, and independence do not diminish with time, but grow. Deeper point, one of the most striking aspects of Diane Lane's journey is the constant gap between how the public sees her and who she truly is in private. For decades, fans and media outlets have created their own version of Diane, an image shaped by movie roles, red carpet appearances, and carefully selected headlines. In this public version, she is often portrayed as a woman surrounded by passion, drama, and hidden romances, someone whose life mirrors the emotional intensity of her films. She has acknowledged love, heartbreak, and mistakes, but she avoids assigning blame or feeding dramatic narratives. This approach reflects emotional maturity and self-awareness. Diane understands that real life does not fit neatly into tabloid stories. Relationships are complex, shaped by timing, personal growth, and circumstances that outsiders rarely understand. By refusing to reduce her experiences to shocking sound bites, she protects not only herself, but also the people she once loved. This choice has sometimes cost her public sympathy, as audiences often prefer clear heroes and villains. Yet Diane seems comfortable with being misunderstood if it means staying honest. Over time, this quiet integrity has reshaped how many fans view her. As audiences grow older, they begin to appreciate nuance over drama. They recognize that Diane's calm presence is not emptiness, but depth. Her life serves as a reminder that not every truth needs to be shouted to be real. In an industry that rewards oversharing, Diane Lane's restraint feels almost revolutionary. It shows that dignity can exist alongside fame, and that a person's worth is not measured by how much of their private life they reveal. By living this way, Diane has quietly challenged Hollywood's expectations, proving that a woman can remain relevant, admired, and respected without turning her life into a spectacle. Motherhood played one of the most important and grounding roles in Diane Lane's life, quietly shaping her decisions, priorities, and understanding of success. When she became a mother to her daughter Eleanor, Diane's view of the world shifted in a profound way. After growing up with instability and emotional uncertainty, she was deeply determined to give her child a sense of safety, honesty, and love. This desire influenced not only her personal choices, but also her professional ones. Diane became more selective about the roles she accepted, often turning down projects that would require long separations or emotional exhaustion. While Hollywood often celebrates constant visibility and non-stop productivity, Diane chose balance instead. To her, success was no longer measured only by awards or box office numbers, but by the quality of life she could build for herself and her daughter. This decision sometimes placed her outside the spotlight, leading some to wrongly assume her career had slowed or faded. In reality, Diane was simply living with intention. She wanted to be present, not just famous. Motherhood also softened her understanding of love. While romantic relationships had brought both joy and pain, being a parent introduced a form of love that felt unconditional and steady. It reminded her that not all relationships are fragile or temporary. This emotional grounding helped her heal from past heartbreaks and reinforce her belief that fulfillment does not depend on having a partner. As her daughter grew older, Diane continued to evolve, learning to let go of guilt and self-judgment. She accepted that she could not control everything, neither public opinion nor the outcomes of relationships, but she could control how she showed up in her own life. This realization marked a turning point. Diane stopped chasing approval and began trusting her own values. In interviews, she has spoken about learning patience, forgiveness, and self-compassion, qualities that did not come easily after a childhood marked by emotional disruption. Through motherhood, she learned that strength does not always mean independence. Sometimes it means vulnerability and presence. This growth also reflected in her later performances, which carried a quiet emotional confidence rather than youthful intensity. Audiences connected with this version of Diane Lane because it felt real and earned. She represented a woman who had lived, lost, learned, and continued forward without bitterness. In redefining success on her own terms, Diane challenged Hollywood's narrow definitions. She showed that stepping back is not the same as giving up, and that choosing a fuller personal life does not weaken artistic impact. Instead, it can deepen it. Diane Lane's journey as a mother and an individual highlights a powerful truth. True success is not about constant attention, dramatic headlines, or public validation. It is about growth, self-understanding, and the courage to live according to one's own values. As Diane Lane enters the later chapters of her life and career, her legacy has become clearer and more meaningful with time. She is no longer just remembered as a beautiful young actress from iconic 1980s films, or as a woman at the center of Hollywood rumors. Instead, she stands as a symbol of endurance, authenticity, and quiet influence in an industry that often rewards noise over substance. Diane's career spans decades, genres, and generations, and through it all, she has remained consistent in one important way. She has never compromised who she is to fit a trend. This consistency has earned her a rare kind of respect, not just from fans, but from fellow actors and filmmakers who value integrity over spectacle. Younger actresses often look to Diane as an example of how to build a lasting career without losing personal boundaries. She has shown that it is possible to be admired without being constantly visible, and relevant without being controversial. Her influence is subtle but powerful. It can be seen in the way mature female characters are written today, more complex, more human, and less defined by romance alone. Diane helped pave the way for these roles by choosing stories that reflected real emotional experiences rather than shallow ideals. Beyond acting, her approach to fame itself has left a lasting mark. By refusing to turn her private life into entertainment, she challenged the idea that celebrities owe the public access to their personal struggles. In doing so, she reminded audiences that actors are people first, not characters living out endless storylines. Even now, interest in Diane Lane remains strong, not because of shocking revelations, but because of the life she has lived with honesty and grace. Her story resonates especially with viewers who have grown tired of exaggerated scandals and fleeting fame. They see in Diane someone who has weathered storms without becoming hardened, who has faced heartbreak without becoming cynical, and who has aged without apology. In a culture that often sidelines women as they grow older, Diane Lane continues to matter because she represents something rare, lasting relevance built on substance. Her legacy is not defined by who she loved or what rumors followed her, but by the strength with which she navigated both public attention and private pain. As time goes on, her story will likely be remembered not as a tale of scandal, but as a testament to resilience, self-respect, and the power of living life on one's own terms. Despite years of headlines, rumors, and dramatic framing, the idea that Diane Lane's life was defined by scandal has never truly matched reality. What the public often labeled as scandalous affairs were, in most cases, normal human relationships placed under an unforgiving spotlight. Hollywood has a long tradition of turning personal connections into sensational stories, especially when the person involved is private, elegant, and emotionally complex. Diane Lane fit that description perfectly. Because she did not constantly explain herself, others were quick to fill in the gaps with speculation. Her powerful performances in films like Unfaithful blurred the line between fiction and reality for many viewers, leading them to assume her real life mirrored the intensity of her characters. In truth, Diane was an actress doing her job exceptionally well. The emotional honesty she brought to her roles came not from hidden scandals, but from empathy, observation, and lived experience. Like many people she loved, she lost, and she learned, the difference was that her experiences unfolded in front of cameras and headlines. What makes Diane's story important is not the rumors themselves, but how she responded to them. She never built her identity around denial or defense. Instead, she allowed time to reveal the truth. As years passed, many of the so-called scandals faded, replaced by a broader understanding of who she really was. Audiences began to see a pattern. Diane Lane was consistent, thoughtful, and grounded, while the gossip was fleeting and often inaccurate. This contrast exposed a larger issue within celebrity culture, the tendency to reduce women to their romantic histories, while ignoring their growth, talent, and resilience. Diane quietly resisted this reduction by refusing to play along. She did not sell her pain, exaggerate her past, or reinvent herself through controversy. Her silence was not weakness. It was choice. It allowed her to move forward without being trapped by old narratives. Over time, this approach reshaped her public image. Instead of being remembered for scandals, she became known for longevity, grace, and emotional depth. Younger audiences discovering her work today